Let's bring in Reid I'Anson now, senior commodity analyst at data intelligence company Kpler. He joins us from Houston, Texas. Reid, thank you very much indeed for joining us. First of all, should the shale producers fear Biden's Green New Deal?
I think at this point, the fears shouldn't be felt too hard by domestic producers at this point. Obviously, the Biden administration has moved to end permitting on new leases, but keep in mind that U.S. domestic production is overwhelmingly on private land. About 75% of all oil and gas output takes place on private land. So at this point, I think the fears should not be too high.
Longer term, oil is a sunset industry, given the shift towards carbon neutrality, and it will be a multi-decade process. Nonetheless, which oil major, Reid, would you say is ahead of the curve in terms of meaningfully decarbonizing its portfolio and not just pushing out glossy brochures about sustainability?
Right now, there's an interesting delineation between Europe and the United States in terms of oil majors. Obviously, you know, players like Shell and BP in Europe who are very focused on decarbonizing, very focused on seeking green alternatives to their domestic or their traditional oil and gas portfolio. This is totally different in the United States. Players like Chevron and Exxon have not shown much of an interest at all at this point in moving into green technologies as of yet. Now, it is important to keep in mind, I would say, within the United States, Chevron is quite well positioned when it comes to domestic gas production, which is probably the future for the U.S. Energy sector. Exxon is still completely committed to its oil portfolio, which is a little more in doubt, I would say, moving forward.
But to the point that's been raised by the activists, the three green groups that have filed a complaint against Chevron, and this goes down to this idea of greenwashing, just ticking the boxes when, in fact, nothing meaningful is really being done in terms of decarbonisation. Is there any substance or merit to these claims?
Certainly, yeah. As of this point, I think U.S. majors have not really shown much interest that they want to make sizable green investments, especially compared to their European counterparts. Of course, this could all change if government regulation maybe makes it more profitable to do so, but not at this point.
And Reid, you guys at Kpler do some great work in terms of really analysing forensically the flows, the tanker traffic, the inventory. In terms of the market balances, supply restraint from OPEC, that has to continue until OECD inventories really start normalizing. Saudi has made that clear. How would you describe the supply balances right now, and are they approaching anything that can be characterized as tight?
I would say we're still not in a tight market. Globally, inventories have started to flatten. Yes, for the past 3 quarters, we've seen pretty large drops in onshore inventories, but the rate of decline has slowed in recent months, and that has come as OPEC has increased exports slightly. For example, in February, we did see exports up about 900 KBD month over month. But that isn't to say that OPEC has not done a lot of work to balance a market that was far more oversupplied 6 months ago. But there is still quite a bit of path to run before these markets are considered tight, I would say.
And can I turn into the risks facing supply in the Middle East, especially because the Iran-aligned Houthis, they keep probing the Saudi defences, but is a repeat of Abqaiq a possibility? And if there was a material and major hit to supply, then is there enough spare capacity in the system to cover it?
Yeah, there is, but I think that you would no doubt see a spike in prices like you did the last time we saw a successful Houthi attack. Whether they'll be successful again, I couldn't say. It's anyone's guess, but I mean, clearly there is an upward risk factor if that does take place again. I would say that the chances of that are on the lower end, but you know, never can count anything out, of course.
Absolutely. And if we can just bring it back to the domestic picture to round off, Reid, securing environmental permits, you alluded to this earlier, to drill. Is that going to become a lot harder with Deb Haaland in the interior?
I think it could. And again, like I mentioned, about 25% of U.S. production does come from federal lands. It is possible that will become more difficult, but you have to remember the Biden administration is walking a thin line. Obviously, a key part of his constituency comes out of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a big gas producing state, so he's going to want to be careful. And then if you carry this forward, his head of the Energy Department is quite a bit less to the left when it comes to environmental issues, i.e. she has shown a willingness to really look at allowing LNG export projects along the west coast of Mexico. So keep in mind that the Biden administration is going to be walking a fine line between pursuing aggressive environmental policy, but making sure that his domestic constituency, namely in Pennsylvania, are kept happy.
Reid, excellent conversation. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Reid I'Anson from Kpler. Martin.
Thanks.